that I was afraid I'd pull a Jennifer Lawrence at the Oscars. It would just not be a great situation. She fell going up to collect her award, if anybody has not seen the Oscars. Sorry. Guess I should have explained the reference. Oh, I'm really happy to be here with you this morning. I don't want to say that I've been struggling with the message because I was pretty sure that I had it done, that I was ready, and then I was like, okay, I got this. Like, this is going to be, it's fine. I mean, it's been a little while since I've got in front of people to speak, and the last time I gave a message, it was in a very different circumstance. It was in 95-degree weather under a mango tree in Uganda, so a little bit of a different circumstance from what it is here this morning. But the other part of that is that I realize that the stories that I've learned and can tell from time overseas are applicable here in a place where we live in a place of plenty. So this morning, I'm going to tell you a story that I actually gave to a group of Ugandan women prisoners, and then we'll see where God takes it from there. So the story starts off, and it's about a woman who was living a really good life. She had money, she had friends, she had a house. She was an active part of society. She mattered to society. What she said mattered. One day, this woman started to bleed. She didn't think much of it. She had her servants gather the rags of blood and take them out to the city dump and just get rid of them. But the thing is that the bleeding continued. The woman sent for doctors and healers and medicine men, and they came one by one, but there was nothing they could do. In fact, after she had been seen by them, it just continued to get worse. Slowly, her servants started to leave her one by one, and as people do, people in her village and her community, they began to talk. Soon, the woman found herself alone. No money, no family that was willing to claim her, no friends. She was pushed out of society. They now considered this woman to be an untouchable and considered her unclean. The woman found herself begging for bits and bobs to eat, her clothes tattered, torn, dirty, and this went on for 12 years. Then she began to hear about this guy named Jesus. She heard of all of the amazing things that he had done. And she thought, maybe, just maybe, if I'm able to just at least touch his clothes, then I too can be healed. So the woman found out that Jesus was going to be passing through her town, so she made her way from the dumps on the outside of the city, foraging her way through people, trying not to touch them, because she was afraid if she did that she would be stoned or she would be cast out or killed. But her desperation forced her to continue, crawling along the ground, yearning just to touch his cloak. But she didn't want him to know that she was going to touch him because she was fearful that then he would be considered unclean. So she continued. She pushed her way forward. And then all of a sudden, Jesus stops. The crowds surrounded him, his followers confused because they were just going to be passing through the city. And Jesus says, "Who touched me?" So, mind you, we'll use this as an example. You're in a stadium full of people, and everybody converges onto the field, so you've got thousands of people together. And Jesus is in the middle, and he stops and says, "Who touched me?" Think about what's going through his disciples' mind here. He's like, What? Who touched you? Well, like 15,000 people just touched you. What do you mean, who touched you? Like, the list can go on. But all of a sudden, they hear this woman, and she says, it was me. Because at the time that the woman touched Jesus' cloak, he could feel that healing power go out of him, and she was instantly healed. So she threw herself at Jesus' feet and told him everything. She expected punishment, but Jesus reached out his hand. He looked at the woman in the eye and said, "Daughter." Here's this woman who has been an outcast for 12 years, not really having human touch or human connection or human emotion, at the feet of Jesus, and he reaches out his hand and gives her identity back and says, "Daughter." This woman, tears streaming down her face, and he says, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." So I think that when I originally was going through this, that I was planning to go a different direction than I am now. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. So this woman who had been an outcast and hadn't been touched and hadn't had any human connection or human emotion, that her story, when she goes and she touches Jesus' cloak and she's automatically healed, that miracle, the story could have ended there. It could have stopped and we'd have been like, that's awesome. Like that healing, that touch, that's awesome. I mean, to think that one man can continue to heal people, it's an incredible thing. But the thing is that the story didn't stop there. Jesus called out to her and he said, "Who touched me?" You know, Jesus knew exactly what had happened. So him calling out to her wasn't for her benefit. It was for the benefit of the community around her. Because what he did is he gave her value. He was intentional with his words. He took this woman out of being exiled and brought her back into the community. You know, one of the things that I've learned is that we have a lot of walls that we build around us. Some we don't even know are there. But if we allow people and we allow ourselves to speak identity into us and into circumstances, those walls can be broken down. And only when those walls are broken down can the bridges be built. I think that a great example of this is when I was overseas and we met the Ugandan people, incredible people. They were people who had very, very little, but they gave you everything that they had. They were people that valued you because you took time to invest in them. So I think that there are a few photos. So this is one of the villages that we were able to minister in. And when you choose to invest in people, that you give them something far greater than the words that you say to them. You give them identity. You give them value. You give them love. There are stories like this throughout all of Scripture about these times of miracles and of healing. And we sometimes forget that after the miracle that there are the words that happen afterwards, that Jesus restores people, that he continues to restore people and he continues to love on people. And I think that sometimes we get so caught up in the world that we forget to see the value. I think that we see news stories constantly that are full of violence and hatred and anger. And it seems that they highlight the church as being part of that because, well, I don't agree with this person because they do this. I don't agree with this political party. I don't agree with this. And it's fine to disagree, but it's not okay to hate. It's fine to have open and honest discussion with people. But when that discussion turns into you putting more importance on church doctrine, that turns into you putting more importance on your differences, that you're completely missing the point of the miracle. And the miracle is to love. The miracle that we can find in one another, that we can restore value in one another, that we can speak life and identity into each other. It's okay to characterize the behavior, but it's not okay to characterize the identity. The identity is divinely given to us. Our behaviors are our own. But our identity comes from God. We were created in His image. And that identity is not something to be toiled with. And and I catch myself in very okay, I catch myself a lot in the identity thing because I'd be like, that's stupid. Oh my gosh, you're so dumb. Oh my gosh, how could you even think like that? That's ridiculous. But the thing is that you change what you say, and man, that was not a great idea. Yeah, that was the behavior, not so great. Have you thought about this? Or, yeah, that was not a great choice. Maybe we should think of a better choice the next time. And I find myself saying that a lot because, I work in 911 part-time, and people make really bad choices sometimes. Bless their hearts. But you speak to the behavior, you don't speak to the identity of somebody. You have to be intentional with the words that you say, because the intent of your words isn't just for their benefit, but it's for the benefit of the people around them. And if you're intentional with the words that you say to other people, you have to be just as intentional with the words that you say to yourself. Because part of the walls that a lot of people have built up around them, and something that I didn't learn until I was forced to be in a group for 6 months with people that I didn't know, is that there are a lot of people who, when they really think about it, that they question the love of God, and they question the love of God for themselves. There's a TV evangelist that had hundreds of thousands of followers, and he gave amazing messages. But somebody asked him once, why don't you ever give messages on love? And he's like, well, to be honest with you, I don't know that I believe that God loves me. So here's a TV evangelist that tells stories, but didn't believe that God loved him. And I think that all too often we find ourselves in those same circumstances, that we look solely at the miracle, but we forget the words. That we look at the miracle, but we forget to give ourselves the words. We forget to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, you are worth it, that you are loved, that you have identity, that you are created for purpose, for something more than what you see, and that you are loved. It's an amazing thing when you can feel that in the very core of who you are, that you can then in turn take that and give it to somebody else and help them to break down those walls that they've put around themselves. And then they in turn can go out and to help somebody else. And they can help break down walls that these people have built around their lives. Because, as I said, you've got to be able to break down the walls before you can build a bridge to connect yourself to another person. Because you can say the words, but if you don't believe the words, people realize that there's a little bit of there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. And the action doesn't have to be a physical action. You can intrinsically tell if somebody is feeding you a line of crap, to be honest with you. And I think that was the story of my life for a long time, is that I can talk, but I realized that I was talking, but I wasn't believing what I was saying. And I think that when I had people that took the time to show me how to invest in myself, and then in turn be able to go into the nations to invest in other people, it's life-changing. And you don't have to go into the nations to choose to invest in people. You can go out your front door. You can go to a neighbor's house. You can go pick up your coffee at Starbucks in the morning. You can talk to a coworker, a teacher, a friend of a child of yours, your child, your spouse, family. You can begin those bridges right here. And as you continue to build the bridges and you continue to break the gap that is between the true message of love and life, you can bridge the gap between the hopeless and the dark. To allow people to see the light in the midst of some really dark times that we experience. So I think that it's important to remember the story of that woman, that she was an outcast because her community made her feel like she was an outcast. But it was Jesus that restored her, but he didn't just restore her physically, he restored her completely. He restored the community's belief about her. And we need to do the same. We need to go to our neighbors. We need to go to the people that we've wronged or that we feel have wronged us, and extend that branch of forgiveness, because forgiveness isn't necessarily about the other person. It's about setting yourself free. So I challenge you. I challenge you to speak life into yourself. I challenge you to speak life into your neighbors. I challenge you to break down the walls. And if you find yourself in a difficult situation, or you think not great thoughts about yourself sometimes, it's a perfect place to start looking at where the wall is. Because you can knock them down, but they come back up if you don't continue to break through, and you don't continue to speak life into yourself, and you don't continue to believe that there is something more than what you see. So I'm going to ask the worship team to come up. It was quick, but I didn't want to keep you long. And I think that I was told one time that if you don't learn something in the first 5 minutes, that you're going to forget the next 15. So it works for me. It works for me. So we are going to close out the service just a little bit differently than what is normal.